I don't know if you guys have seen this, but there was an article that EA posted recently talking about how they had employed a couple of ex-military veterans to work on the new Battlefield game releasing in 2025. And in this article, there is some very intriguing language that I think alludes to some things that might be in the next game. And the bigger revelation to me anyway is why they decided to talk about this in the first place. I think that's more important. Now, this also caused a bit of discussion in the community, bit of a ruckus, I guess, because some people just see the headline and they don't actually read the whole thing. And this led to many players assuming that this kind of thing means that the new game would turn into a milsim type game like Arma, for example. They're assuming that these military vets hate the way that Battlefield was more arcadey, I guess, and go in and change a lot of the gameplay mechanics to make it hardcore. I don't think that's what's happening here though, because let's face it, Battlefield has never been a milsim. I don't think it ever will be either. Yeah, you could say BF 1942, the original. BF2 perhaps lent in that direction a bit with some of the gameplay mechanics that had like more classes, a bigger emphasis on team play, squad leader only spawns, etc. But overall, I feel like the majority of the fan base is there nowadays because it is that more pick up and play arcadey style, and DICE will cater to that huge percentage of the audience. Now, BF3, I feel really nailed the balance of that space in between COD and milsim. It had fun gunplay and movement, and you can still pull off those insane action movie moments, but at the same time, the game remained grounded, gritty, and authentic. I digress, but I just wanted to talk about that first. So let's take a look then. So they mentioned two people who are working on the next game through this Hiring Our Heroes program. The first was Aaron Johnson, former Special Forces and now an associate game manager at Ripple Effect. He was in the military for 20 years, operating in Afghanistan, Italy, Japan, New York, North Carolina, and more, working his way up from an operator to a team sergeant in the Special Forces to becoming a small unit tactics instructor. The second person was Madison Dougherty, former military officer, now Battlefield product manager, and she started out as an enlisted military police soldier, then advancing her career into a logistics officer and battalion operations officer, taking her all around the world, including Romania, Latvia, Bulgaria, and Germany. There's plenty more to look at, but before we do, this isn't the first time that Battlefield has done this or addressed this topic. I remember back in 2011 when the hype and marketing for Battlefield 3 was ramping up, DICE openly talked about how they'd worked with Andy McNabb, who's an ex-SAS soldier famous for writing books, fiction and non-fiction. I would hazard a guess that he's most known for a book called Bravo 20. And I recall that he did actually write a book connected to the story of Battlefield 3, revolving mainly around Dima, the Russian in the game. But DICE consulted with Andy on BF3 before it came out in regards to creating an authentic combat experience for the game. I found a quote from him here in an interview with The Guardian from 2011 talking about this. He said, "I spent time with the designers and artists looking at the aesthetics, the right use of weapons, different ranges of fire, operations in urban and desert environments. I worked with the stuntmen and actors in the motion capture studios, showing them how to hold their guns. The team just wanted everything to look right." So that's the kind of thing that he did there. That interview talks a bit more about how they worked with him to make sure that explosions look correct, or RPGs, how tank crews operate, the way that the guns look and feel, that kind of stuff. But the difference now though is that these two people in the new EA article are working full time on the game, and they're in manager positions, so they've got some sway on how things are formed. Some quotes from them that were picked in the EA article are quite eye-opening in my opinion, and mention very specific things. This one here from Aaron, for example, he said, "I was there to manage the assault force and maneuver them on the ground at first. And so when I was on the other side of that, I was the guy leading the charge somewhere. And I came back as a small unit tactics instructor. It's a course where we teach the fundamentals of shooting, movement, communication, medical aid, and sustainment. We teach them how to do that in a combat environment, as well as behind enemy lines." Johnson is thrilled to be part of Ripple Effect, the studio helping shape the next iteration of the Battlefield franchise. That kind of language, perhaps alluding to the kind of things we'll be doing in the new game, tight infantry squads behind enemy lines. And Madison said this in the article too. "I was in the 3rd Infantry Division in Savannah, Georgia, where I had my first job as the distribution platoon leader for the Assault Helicopter Battalion, encompassing more than 30 UH-60 Black Hawk helicopters. The best way to describe it is as the most expensive mobile gas station you've ever seen. In that capacity, my soldiers and I were responsible for all petroleum refuel and ammunition resupply missions for the battalion. I have been able to give good feedback on what realistic military stuff looks like. We've put together executive summaries on military realism. After her 3-month fellowship, Doherty was hired full-time by Ripple Effect. Her work is helping make the next generation of Battlefield the best possible game. For her, it was the perfect opportunity. She got to transition to a private company, and at the same time, she could offer invaluable insights to support the development of the game itself. After all, she lived it. So that's 2 ex-military, modern militaries in the last 20 years who are working on the new game, talking about how they're using their experiences to build the next Battlefield with a focus on military realism. Why would they be talking about this kind of stuff if it wasn't a modern setting for the next game? Name dropping things like Black Hawk helicopters. I don't think any of this is an accident, and it's there to get the hype train going, and it's really starting to stir up some images in the mind as to what this game might look like. Modern military, that's always been a safe bet for the 2025 game. DICE need a home run, and I feel like with these kind of articles, they're already hinting the direction and time setting of the game. I've probably put some of these on the screen already, but here's some of the photographs they have on that page as you're scrolling down. Do you see what I'm getting at here? So just going back to what we were talking about at the start, about how some people assume this is about turning the game into a milsim. I reckon after reading through that article and looking at what DICE have done in the past, where they've talked to people, ex-military, whatever, it's clear that this is more about the authenticity and the game looking and feeling realistic, rather than there being this massive, huge swing of the Battlefield pendulum towards super hardcore gameplay. I don't think that's going to happen, and I think that would be a big mistake. But as for the game looking gritty and being authentic to modern military, as they're talking about, I'm totally on board with that. And I've said this time and time again, DICE absolutely nailed the aesthetic in Battlefield 3. And minus the blue filter and the Vaseline, we're not talking about that, but you get what I'm saying, right? Just the way that the classes looked, the way the destruction looked, the environments, the guns, the animations, the vehicles, the audio, the sound effects, the things that the soldiers were saying and shouting at each other. It had such an immersive, cool vibe to it, and you really felt like you were in it at times. So if they just come close to that again, but obviously with all the bells and whistles of modern consoles and PCs, they're on to a winner, at least in terms of the aesthetics, the look of the game, in my opinion. Gameplay, they've not said anything yet, but this article is purposeful and they've done it for a reason. As I promised you guys, anytime that we learn anything at all about the new Battlefield game, I'm going to make a video, big or small. So far, it's been investors' calls and a few things here and there that have been in interviews, whatever it is. But this article, despite it being a bit low-key and mainly advertising the Hiring Our Heroes initiative, this was something. This was real, and there's a bunch of hints in there. That language is super specific. So with that said, do let me know your thoughts on all of this below. It's our first time we've seen something that might actually reflect how the game will end up looking. How are you feeling about all this? Let me know. Drop me a like if you enjoyed the video. Thank you. A dislike if you didn't, of course. Subscribe if you're new here, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.